South Africa's premier circuit racing formula, the Global Touring Car Series, or GTC, hit the Zwartkops Raceway near Pretoria for the second time in the 2019 series in the 5th round in the 8th meeting calendar. At the Extreme Festival Racing at Zwartkops were the day's premier events, the 2 races for GTC honours. Simon Moss in his gorgeous-looking Audi had a 3rd go-to-woe win in the series in Cape Town at the previous clash and was hunting for a half a dozen victories in the year already, while Johan Fourie won race 2 in a daring drive from the front. So the championship was delicately poised at the halfway mark, seeing that there had already been 2 consecutive rounds which had 4 different drivers on the top step of the podium. The weekend also saw 2 championship debutants on the grid, being Niaz Modak in the WH Auctioneers BMW and race director Gary Formato taking on the driving duties in the SMD Exotics Ford Focus. In the GTC 2 Championship battle for supremacy, it was Brad Liebenberg who extended his lead to a breathable 17 points ahead of a resurgent Adrian Wood, with Charles Smallberger in 3rd. Zwartkops is a tight U-shaped circuit which measures 2.4 kilometers, or exactly 1.5 miles in the old language. SA's top touring car racers were about to charge around the raceway 12 times. Times 2 of the course, as there are 2 races of course. Crucially, starting positions for race 1 of 2 across both classes are determined by fastest qualifying lap times, but in the second race, the start is determined in inverse order. Thus, the winner starts right at the back, and the slower teams get their shot at glory from the front of the grid. Volkswagen were leading the manufacturer's title chase and had a good grip on things at the sharp end of the field, but the BMW brigade was looking to halt their progress. Saturday morning's qualifying session dawned cloudless and perfect, but cool, and was a closely fought contest with the top 6 in the championship sprint covered by a mere 0.215 of a second. Moss, for the umpteenth time, won the 1,000 Rand black and yellow recognition for his 4th pole position of the year, which would have pleased his old man Terry no end. In GTC 2, Charles Smallberger showed good pace throughout Friday's practice sessions in his Universal Healthcare VW Golf, and followed this up by taking pole on Saturday morning, confirming his status as championship points leader. The managing director of the series and 5-time South African motorsport champion Gary Formato learned his craft in the Big Banger V8s, but he realized that it was more fun to be behind the wheel than behind a desk.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun, I've got to say. A lot more to do on the day for us now, but we're enjoying it. I think the whole idea for this race was to give this car a run out. If you remember last year, we had the car in the V8 engine form, so we've gone back to a 2-litre engine, which is now Ford Focus 2-litre engine, ST engine in the car. So it's really a shakedown for us today, just to see how it performs in race conditions, what we need to work on, and then we'll probably have a different driver in the car in Sean Duminy from the rest of the season going in. So we have to give him a nice car in one piece at the end of the day, and the car that's working well.
Well, that would be nice, Gary, although let's remember that he is the boss. The wondrous thing about the GTC format is that fans can get up close and personal on the grid before the start, and the fans at Zwartkops did not let the opportunity go a-begging.
I don't feel on the wheel there. I don't feel there.
Niaz Modak was excited about his step up into the big league, but wanted a little more time in the Beamer.
Yeah, I think this is a totally different level, but I haven't tested much in the car, but the first time I'm in the car, I actually loved the car. My dream was always to be here, to drive in GTC, and I got the opportunity from Vic. I just want to say thank you to Vic and his team, VM Innovations. I just want to say thank you to WH Auctioneers and Woodmead Auto. Without them, it wouldn't have been possible that we be here.
The nerves apparent from Niaz, but even the spectators felt it. Moss took pole for the Moss Racing Audi All-Power team, just outsprinting Toyota Gazoo Racing South Africa's Michael van Rooyen by a hair's breadth. Row 2, and it was an all-VW Motorsport Jetta lineup with Masters and Rowe. Robert Vonk took his Chemical Logistics WCT Engineering BMW into 5th, just ahead of Johan Fourie in his all-white BMW. Moss's teammate Chop Sapuka slotted into 7th place ahead of race director and now standing driver 44-year-old Formato. With Niaz Modak and the WH Auctioneers BMW at the back, so a nice spread of manufacturers on the grid. Ditto in the GTC 2s as Universal Healthcare's Charles Smallberger and VW Motorsports Liebenberg lined up behind him, with Adrian Wood 0.03 of a second ahead of Mandlam Dekani, who qualified his Transitliner Mini John Cooper Works in 4th. While Paul Hill in his Kalex VW Golf brought up the rear. Michael van Rooyen in the Gazoo Toyota invited us along for the ride, and we gladly accepted his kind request. The warm-up lap gives the racers a running start at the line, and that's certainly what they did as the 9th race of the season and the first round of 5 got underway. Moss angled it in perfectly and from the get-go shut the door comprehensively on Van Rooyen in a very neat move, but Robert Volk and his BMW got the lightest of touches from the back and lost control in what could only be described as a balletic move, although Robbie would not have wanted to do the pirouette if he could have helped it. Luckily he righted the ship and went on his way, albeit right at the back with miles of ground to make up. Zwartkops was redesigned along the most fashionable and practical trends in world racing circuit planning in the early 2000s, with the American amphitheater concept making at least 70% of the circuit visible to all spectators. Next off though, it was Van Rooyen, who drifted just wide enough onto the curb to lose some traction, and then he did some serious off-roading too. For he is a multiple national champion, and the Cape-based driver sees Zwartkops Raceway as a home away from home. It's a circuit he knows well. The raceway has had him produce a host of superb results throughout the previous 3 GTC championship seasons, just missing out on victory on no less than 4 occasions. Up front though, Moss was in his customary dictating mood, and the gap was starting to grow for the man from Port Elizabeth, followed by the Gentas of Masters and Rowe, then Fourie, who'd nailed it past Van Rooyen and Sepuka back in 6th. The racing conditions were perfect with not a cloud in the sky, a typical high-felt winter's day with temperatures edging towards the 22-degree mark, and Moss making it hotter with every turn of the wheel. Gauteng is indeed the hub of motorsport in South Africa. Almost 80% of circuit racing licensees make their living and racing in the province. Therefore, the pretty raceway layout is often the testing ground for new thoughts and ideas for the burgeoning racing community in this part of the world. Rowe is a phenom with 1 win to his name already this season and just 8 points behind his teammate Masters in 3rd place on the log. Moss is the only driver to have won at least 1 race at each circuit thus far in 2019, while main rival Keegan Masters in 2nd place has not recorded a win yet despite consistently accumulating points through a host of podium finishes, 6 of them in all. However, when Moss has the car set up right and he's in control like this, he's one tough customer, and he was making the gap grow perceptibly to his pursuers, while the gap to the battle for 4th place was also opening up just some Gauteng daylight. In the GTC 2s, Charles Smallberger and that Universal Health Golf GTI of his was edging away from Liebenberg and Wood, while a game Dekani and the Mini tried to keep contact with Paul Hill, filling his rearview mirrors with some more golf. Formato and Modak was certainly getting one tied on as well. In car now with Fourie, let's watch the privateer in his office. Van Rooyen not yet making an impact, but the Toyota man is quick and needed to make up for his slip on lap 1. He kept up the pressure. Meanwhile, Masters was gamely trying to hold on to Moss's coattails, but without much effect nor luck, and the same could be said of his VW teammate Rowe. Still it was Fourie and then the Toyota with Van Rooyen back in the hunt for 4th, but it seemed as if Johan had his number through the corners, and every time the pressure was released, as the Beamer got away again. Sepuka and the 2nd Audi had a moment as they went past the pits again, but corrected in time to save a major spill. However, that just left more tarmac open behind Van Rooyen, which left him only having to reconfigure a way past the Cape Townian in front of him, and that little twitch had Sepuka with a lot of black top open in front of him. Van Rooyen, who on debut for the Japanese motor manufacturer gave Moss a real run for his money in race 1 of the season in Port Shepstone, has been there or thereabouts all season. Same for Liebenberg and the rest of the GTC 2 brigade. He's just had the drop on them all season, and try as they might when he was in pole, he was almost unstoppable. Championship and race leader Moss looking for all the rice in China as he was on a Sunday afternoon drive with everything completely in control, and our in-car pictures confirms that. Paul Hill was consistently lapping at just over the 70-second mark and was firmly ensconced in 5th in the Kalex Golf. The 32-year-old Robert Volk had been racing since the age of 9, winning no less than 9 single-seater championships in Formula Ford and Formula VW, but this time he was playing catch-up after having to pit. The GTC 2s were giving it horns, but they couldn't make any headway on Smallberger, who was very much in a class of his own in GTC 2, but that didn't stop him from making life hard for Volk, who was storming through the field wanting to secure a good starting spot for race 2 in the reverse order grid. Volk was on the march but had a mountain to climb and get back to his class, while Sepuka was strangely off the pace and not looking like he was going to get on it soon either. In the GTC 2s, Mdakani in his Mini, doing an impression of a New Zealand rugby player, was steady as she goes, but Moss the Boss was coming past and doing so quickly. The part of the race, the latter laps, is always fraught with danger for the race leader, who has to navigate his way past the slower traffic, but Moss has a lot of experience this year, looking for win number 6. On his last lap and flying along was Moss, Modak meanwhile was steady too and finding his rhythm nicely. Master certainly was too, but just not fast enough to make any inroads in Moss's lead. And then Rowe showed some amazing presence of mind, but that allowed Farid to slip away. A rather scary moment, but that gave Van Rooyen a chance to barrel up the inside and pick up valuable championship hopes and points if he could stay right there. But Rowe would have none of it. Late race shenanigans as always in GTC racing, this time at the 5th meeting of the season at the Zwartkops Raceway west of Pretoria. Moss putting the icing and the cherry on a faultless drive and win number 6. Let's enjoy some of the moments with him in car. That Audi sounding smooth and mean. In the meantime, Rowe and Van Rooyen were producing one of the battles of the day for 4th, but that in turn just allowed Farid to slip further up the road as these two men were preoccupied with each other. Moss, with the team principal, his dad Terry, himself a multiple champion, watching from the pit wall, streaking towards his half a dozen wins, barring any late race disasters of course, would have been pleased as punch after a stellar start and a dominant performance. Moss it was then who took his 6th victory of the season ahead of Masters, with a solid Farid completing the podium in 3rd spot. So a half a dozen wins for Moss, while Rowe held off Van Rooyen in the closing stages to finish in 4th and 5th places respectively, with Sepuka coming in 6th, quite a way back. Another win for Smallberger, while Liebenberg and Wood retained their positions to complete the podium. For Moss, there have been a few intricate electrical issues, but you'd never have said so from his consistent output on the top step of the podium.
Yeah, I'm very chuffed. I think we've had a difficult season with regards to small issues here and there that aren't really repairable on the mechanics side. It's just freak wiring issues we've had, but managed to solve everything. The car came home in one piece, and the guys have done a great job this weekend. We battled in practice, but we knew the tyres were a bit old compared to the other guys. And come qualifying, we put it on pole and led from start to finish. So got a little bit of pace in the bag for race 2, and there's going to be a lot of traffic, so we're going to have to just try and work our way through.
Smallberger built a solid lead and then held on to take his 2nd win for the season.
Yeah, great. Just a big thanks to my team and my sponsors for putting everything together. And yeah, I got a good start and I managed to avoid a bit of crashes in turn 1 with the GTC 1 guys. And once I got through there, I had a bit of a gap and I managed to hold them off.
Now the hard work started for the teams as they had to sort out car setup and those little minor ailments that happen when your driver is going as fast as he can out there. The 5th round of the 2019 GTC series at Zwartkops Raceway continues right here, right after this. This is the 5th round of the GTC Series 2019 at the Zwartkops Raceway west of Pretoria, and after race 1, everyone took a quick breather except for some aspirant racers, professional shoppers, some entertainers, and photographers and their models. And then of course the mechanics who had their work cut out for them to get the cars ready for race 2. As the cars rolled out for the 10th race of the season, the GTC racing started at the Desi Raceway in KwaZulu-Natal earlier in the year, pitted at Zwartkops, while the next stop on the calendar was Killarney in the mother city. Port Elizabeth's Aldo Scribanti was next, and then back to Pretoria. still coming up, and the very next stop, the East London Grand Prix circuit, and the series finishes off with another visit to Cape Town, topped off by the finale in late October at the Red Star Raceway in Delmas. Here at Zwartkops, Robbie Volk started on the front row of Race 2's inverted grid alongside fellow pole sitter Gary van Marto, who seemed to have had the Ford sorted out and ready to rock and roll in Race 2. Paul Hill in GTC 2's pole gave it the thumbs up, as did Mandla Mdekani. The tension at the start of the race is always palpable, and it was no different here in Race 2. In car again with Moss, who would now be starting right at the back and would have to produce a demonic drive to get on the podium and squirrel away some more championship points. The start of Race 2, and they're off. Volk would be very difficult to beat from pole, and it would probably need a mistake or two from him or a blind over drive from someone else, or both. Moss immediately impatient to get going. 9 cars all bunched up, and Volk holding station. It drew gasps from the crowd as they raced under the proverbial blanket. Something would have to give. And it did. Sepuka with a touch from someone, and then the inevitable off. It looked like it was the end of the day for the likeable Audi man. That off gave Volk a chance to stretch his Beamer's legs, while Van Rooyen produced a good move to wiggle into second. With Fourie, Masters and Rowe about to embark on the second edition of their Titanic scrap in Race 1. Moss, on the other hand, was dying to get going but found himself hemmed in by the traffic. He even tried the off-road route, but that didn't help either. The Audi man was desperate to find that gap he was looking for. But as the pace car came out, Sepuka had dredged himself off the tyres and was resuming his battle to huge cheers from the crowd. Here's another look, the smallest of touches. Chops loses his shape and into the high-filled dust in the tyres. Live action again now, and Moss would probably not have wanted Keegan Masters as his wingman at this stage, but having started right at the back, that's what he got. Make that wing mirror man. It was a super scrap early on lap 2. Just to see how super, let's go on board with Mr. Masters. Formato again seemed to have problems with the Ford, and that touch on Sepuka and disappeared from view, never to be seen again, but Volk was in a mean mood and proved it up front. When you've got 2 decades of racing experience, you take the chances that come your way. Volk certainly did. But if Moss had thought he got rid of Masters, he was in for a big surprise as the Jetta pilot rambled up the inside on the turn, and Simon seemed unable to do anything about it. Up front, Van Rooyen had caught up to Volk again, so perhaps the sting in the tail was about to come from the output of the Toyota Corolla, while Moss and Masters were going at it hammer and tongs, Moss using all of the road and then some. The 2s and Race 2 saw Hill capitalizing on his pole position and started off with meaning. He had Mdekani behind him, who was holding back the chasing pack, with Smallberger, Wood and Liebenberg all trying to edge closer, but finding a solid passing spot at this raceway is far easier said than done. Hill was going well, but had them all lined up waiting to pounce on the smallest mistake. His driving, though, looked rock solid from the inside, particularly from Wood's perspective. Liebenberg too had to keep a clear head and take the chances when they presented themselves. He and Wood almost swapped paint a few times early on. In fact, it was mirror-to-mirror racing for the 2 stablemates. Volk was looking for a maiden victory in 2019 despite some very consistent performances throughout. He just could not lock down a W, yet that looked like it was about to change. Rowe and Fourie have diced each other all season long, and was more of the same in Pretoria as the mid-race maneuvers continued. The BMW pilot loves nothing more than a good scrap, and here he certainly had one. But there was now some serious daylight growing between Robert Volk and the rest, and he would have been growing in confidence too with the realization that he was literally and figuratively in the driving seat in Race 2. The GTC 2s and Liebenberg had a whole gaggle of cars in his rearview mirror. It must have been disconcerting to say the least, and then a charging Sepuka went by as well. The Audi man was on a mission, and amazingly there was little to no damage to the car, a testament to great safety features. Ndakani went by in a rush, and then it was Hill in the crosshairs next. Chops was grinding out a great drive. Meanwhile, Fourie was having all his days to try and find a way, but Rowe kept on closing the door on him. You've just got to love it. South African touring car lovers, and if you've got one of these makes you want to see how they race, were introduced to this global series back in 16, where a field of 2-litre turbo-powered racing cars chase each other around. As a result, the GTC Championship Series has created a huge revival in local circuit racing, a challenging mix of circuits with a race car setup and some of the best drivers, which tests every team principle, mechanic and machine to the extreme. Meanwhile, Fourie finally sensed an opening, manoeuvred it into the right entrance for the right-hander and made the move stick. Precision, Mr. Fourie. But now the roles had been reversed and thus the pressure too. Any little miscalculation and you'd be passed, and that applied throughout the field to everyone. The crowd loved this battle. The Beamer fanatics and the VW Jetta supporters got great joy out of this mano-a-mano battle. Supremacy here at the Zwartkops Raceway just west of Pretoria still up for grabs. Surprisingly, Moss wasn't going anywhere either. The GTC 2s and Hill still setting the pace, with Ndakani being pursued by a desperate Smallburger, with championship leader Liebenberg battling like a Trojan to get into contention from the back of the grid. Let's hop in car with Adrian Wood to see if he can catch Smallburger. Volk, in his closing laps, clocking times in the low 63s, was now having to come over the back markers. Again, never an easy task around the circuit, which demands full concentration 100% of the time. And Ndakani looked like he had an A-frame attached to him, pulling Smallburger around. He was just waiting to pounce. Liebenberg was next on the Volk passing list, and no problem. It looked like Robert was using the slower men ahead of him to open up an even bigger gap. Hill too was enjoying the same creature comforts, a rather workable gap. All he had to do was keep up the unrelenting pace. Next up, Volk had the GTC 2 race leader in his sights. Van Rooyen had a remarkably quiet yet steady race and was looking for another podium finish. Up into second, and he had, almost unseen, closed the gap on Volk after the slower traffic had in fact cost the race leader some time. Van Rooyen was flying along, and Hill, gentleman-like, swings out of the way. Volk would again now know that he could ill afford any slips. That gap had certainly closed. And Masters too had his own problems. He still needed to pass Fourie. So one step left on the podium and two men contending for it. Something again had to give. Volk, though, must have got quite a scare, but now he had open road ahead of him again. Fourie, though, could not say the same and would have been driving on tenterhooks, what with Masters all over him like a rash. Safely negotiated, though, and still nicely placed. On the last lap, though, Volk just let it all hang out and he cruised to what was in the end a comfortable victory over Michael van Rooyen, with Fourie holding off a hard-charging Daniel Rowe. Masters had to settle for fifth. Paul Hill made it two maiden winners in 2019. He was ahead of Smallburger and Mandla Ndakani. Smallburger had to make his way through the field from the back but clinched a superb second place. Quite understandably, Volk was smiling from ear to ear.
Yeah, certainly a lot better than race one. Race one is unfortunate. I mean, we didn't get through the first corner, but yeah, we were hoping to have decent pace in the race. I think it was a little bit better than expected. So got through Gary, got past him in the first corner, first lap, and yeah, managed to gap Michael. So I think overall our pace was good and something positive to look forward to going to East London.
Hill loved his first win ever.
To be quite honest, this is my maiden win. In GTC2, it's been a very frustrating time. I think I'm going to hit the bar tonight.
And if you have a maiden victory, why not? Still leading at the top and adding another 38 points to his total of 160, now leading by 8 points over Keegan Masters, it's Simon Moss setting the pace. In the GTC2's Brad Liebenberg in his golf, leading by 22 points from Adrian Wood and Charles Smallberger in a distant third. The biggest mover after round 5, Paul Hill, who slots into 5th after being in 7th. So Volk getting the customary champagne shower. And 2 maiden wins on the podium as Paul Hill won for the first time in 2019 as well. Round number 6 returns to the Extreme Festival at the Lightning Quick Straights of the Border Motorsport East London Grand Prix circuit on August the 31st. We'd love to see you there. I'm Arnold Gint saying thanks for watching.